What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Life of Champ podcast. For today's episode 260, we're going to be discussing the cost of the truth. If you do not know who I am, my name is Champ and I help men. I'll be helping you win by giving you a little bit more perspective on what I believe the true cost of the truth actually is. Make sure you're going to follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Twitch, Kick, all of them, X, all of them. At Life of Champ podcast, pretty much on every single platform. Or at Life of a Champ or at Life of a Champ podcast, pretty much on every single platform. Getting into it, the cost of the truth, right? So you must understand that to speak the truth, to seek the truth, there is a cost. There is something that you must, in a weird way, concede to, right? And I see it all too often with the people that I observe to be some of the biggest truth tellers in today's society. They don't get away with exposing certain truths without some type of repercussion. And with that being said, you must be willing to pay the price. You must be willing and open to deal with any and every situation that you will find yourself in, good or bad, because of what the truth will entail, right? And here's the thing. The position that I see all too often that most people take is they refuse to say anything at all. They believe that not speaking the truth, not saying something remotely close to the truth, is a somewhat better or more advantageous position than actually speaking the truth. And I'm here to let you know that's not the case. For you to be in a position where you know the truth and don't speak about the truth, you're setting everybody else back, right? Not only yourself, but everybody else is going to suffer from people not being exposed to the truth and all of the negativity, all the positivity that will come with the truth, right? Simple. It's really as simple as that. So be more than willing to say exactly what you believe, and in, like I mentioned, the alternative, which is the suppression of what you believe, the suppression of the truth, the suppression of your own speech, is its own consequence. So you don't get away. That what I'm trying to get at is you don't get away with not just saying anything and not being actively involved in this, or not being a participant in speaking of the truth. You cannot get away from this. These you cannot remove yourself from responsibility from this action, or rather inaction. So that is why it's very, very important. Well, I'll give you an example. Recently, I've seen a video, and hopefully you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, go ahead and search the internet for a little bit longer, and you will probably, hopefully, if your algorithm is going to be within your favor, see the video that I had seen recently. I'd seen a video recently that's circulating right now where somebody has spoken up for what they believe to be the truth, and what most Americans won't say, but truly want to say. This individual was forcefully removed from the situation where he was saying exactly what he believed to be the truth. And this is a very interesting predicament because you see this all too often, that this narrative isn't something that is particularly popular or, for whatever reason, politically correct. But here's the thing. The thing that I've came to the conclusion of is whoever came up with this politically correct term doesn't have the best interest for society in mind. They have the best interest for the emotions of some people in the society, but they do not have the best interest in mind. At the very least, you must be willing, and society and the people in society should be willing to pay the price of what the truth looks like, regardless of what it is, because if it is the truth, it is the most base reality that does exist, and everything else, any alternative, is less than. And living in a world where certain people understand a certain truth and other people are still in this less than real world is a very interesting predicament to be in. But I want to circle back a little bit to that video, right? This video was something that had definitely opened my eyes a lot more to the consequences of being able to speak the truth. To be able to put yourself in a position where you should have authority, you should have, at the very least, the respect of your peers, and at the very least, the ears of the people around you. Yet, society we'll say society. Society has this weird way of trying to suppress certain messages. And those are the messages that I believe to be some of the most important ones for you to pay attention to. You must be very, very careful and you must be very, very observant with these certain narratives that for whatever reason people aren't willing to speak out as much on. Admits of it being the truth or not. For people to be shy, for people to be not willing to deal with the consequence of paying the price of the truth, that's a very interesting reality to exist within. So, the video had showed me that people still want to tell the truth, and some people still stand for something. In a world filled with most people who don't stand for anything, who don't want to speak out about anything, who don't really want to speak or even seek the truth out, and are completely okay with living amongst this version of reality that exists that's not the actual truth. There are still a few Americans. There's still a few people that are in this world that are willing to speak out, regardless of the consequence. And in this case, the consequence that was definitely a harsher consequence than I've seen a lot of people pay, at least in the immediate. For you to be forcefully removed from the social circumstance in a very violent way is something that it makes it very, very interesting. There is a narrative that's being curated for the people to go ahead and believe, and anything else that goes outside of that goes against that, for whatever reason, and this is why I think you should be a lot more observant of these things. For whatever reason, it's not okay. It's not politically correct for certain narratives to be out and exposed to the public. Because here's the thing. The thing about it is the truth makes people think. And that's exactly what they're trying to get you to not do, is to think. Think critically. Think about what you believe in. To think about the truth. And that is an issue in itself. And with that being said, if we can observe these things, where certain conversations aren't being had, the truth isn't being as exposed as it should be, and people are being, in reality, lied to. It's lying by omission. Society is lying by omission. People in society are lying by omission by not telling you exactly what's going on, exactly what's happening. That should pique your interest. That should pique your curiosity. And this is something that I believe all too often I've been hyper observant of. For the people who are telling the truth, or what I believe to be the truth, if people were okay with this, then that would make the reality one specific way. But for people to be so against a certain narrative, you must question why. And I think it's very, very interesting that I observe within a lot of people within society who aren't willing to put up with they're not willing to accept the consequences of their own actions in the best way possible, right? If you tell the truth, and I've heard this before, if you tell the truth, regardless of what happens, that is the best way, that is the best outcome that could have came from this situation. As long as you told the truth, regardless of what it is, if you told the truth, karmically speaking, if you believe in karma, you did exactly what you needed to do. And to me, that's respectable at the very least, right? And like I said, if you have consequences, you must be willing to deal with those consequences. Because here's the thing: for you to lie by omission or lie outright lying to get a favorable result for you in your life, that's cowardice, in my opinion. For you to accept the consequences of your actions by telling the truth from the exact way that you see it, to be authentically yourself, to speak on what you truly believe, that is something that is truly of honor. And anything less than that is truly the complete opposite of it, for damn sure. So, don't be like the rest. Don't follow dumb rules in the guise of wanting to be conflict averse. People in society, they will follow dumb rules knowing that they're dumb. Some of them won't even question it, which is ridiculous, but some people will blindly follow rules that they don't necessarily agree with, but if they want to, you know, curate this reality that does exist, that, actually rewards you in a weird way, socially rewards you for not being outspoken about what you believe in, then that makes you almost a bigger fool, um, to go ahead and observe that, right? And to go ahead and recognize that these people do exist. So rules are dumb. And if nobody follows them, then you see what I'm saying? Then it creates a new rule. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand, right? So there's rules that exist within today's society. You have a few people that are going to break away from these set of rules. These rules are dumb. These rules don't make that much sense. These rules are contradicting to what is some of the values that we should have as a society. And at the very least, they must be questioned. The fact that they stop asking the specific questions, the fact that people are just going to blindly comply is part of the reason why we can't get exactly what we want in today's society. Is because people are just not willing to speak up about exactly what they believe in, exactly what they want, without the underlying consequence that potentially can loom if they say the wrong things. But what I'm trying to get you to, what I'm urging you to go ahead and do is to understand that to not say anything at all is a bigger consequence than for you to tell the truth and for something potentially negative to happen. Be willing to deal with the consequences of speaking out on certain things. And more importantly, also be willing to go ahead, be willing and more importantly, well equipped to defend your position with your life and with your reputation. The thing about it is this: people can't deny certain figures. People can't deny certain truths. People can't deny these certain things if it's in their face. If it now becomes something that they must engage with, they must question. Those are some of the most powerful people that do exist, are the ones who can get people to think, obviously. And here's the thing: if your opinion is right, yet you're not able to articulate it properly, then quite frankly, it doesn't really mean as much. So that is why I emphasized that if you're going to speak on the truth, to just be willing and prepared to deal with the consequences or the cost, and more importantly, at the very least, be able to defend it in a way in which you're giving it your best true shot, which would look like being able to articulate it, being able to have conversation. And that's the thing. We're getting to the point where people are in the position where, they don't question it. They don't have a conversation about it. It's not something that's being introduced to them on a regular basis. So when we get into these conversations, of course, people are going to be a little bit more, resistant. And that is why I mentioned a little bit earlier about even the notion of being what politically correct is. And I find it to be very, very funny, right? To me, politically correct means to not hurt the feelings of others with honesty or truth. To be overly conscious and considerate about others' emotions while giving the quote unquote right answer, but not the honest or potentially truth to an answer, or rather to a question or to an idea. So I'm not here, and I'm fine with saying things that are not politically correct, because quite frankly, the consequences, I'm willing to deal with the consequences that do exist, or rather don't. Which brings me to my next point. You must be willing to deal with the cost of the truth, right? Be willing to pay the cost, be willing to do whatever you got to do, right? But one thing I do want to mention, let me go ahead and pull it up real quick, is you can't punish those who don't fear the consequence. So you must understand that as well. For you to be fearful of the consequence gives the punishment that much more power, gives the people that much more power. The people who are willing to give out the punishment that much more power. But the thing is if you diffuse authority, you diffuse the punishment by willing to accept exactly what it is, to be understanding of it, to be willing to have a conversation, be willing to defend your own ideas, And like I mentioned, to be not fearful of the consequence. That is where true power comes in, because now we can have a conversation. If you call me something and I say, you know what, you're right, let's have a conversation about it. Most structures fail when it comes to conversation. They fold under the pressure that does exist after we get over some of the most basic things, right? Let's just say some of the weak people in society, they'll be quick to name call. They'll call you this, they'll call you this. If you just accept it and say, okay, now what? What are you gonna do? All right, let's have a conversation now. Do you think that I'm that? Okay, let's have a conversation and let's see if you can actually confirm this. Let's see if that's actually something that exists within reality. Now we have a conversation. You don't fear the authority, you don't fear the consequence, you don't fear the name calling, you don't fear any of these things. And the thing about it is, right, is the fact that people overly care about what people think. If you know who you are, you know what you stand for, you know what your values are, when somebody calls you out of your name, when somebody calls you out of your character, it shouldn't mean shit to you. Do you know why? Because you know exactly who you are, you know what you stand for, and you're willing to pay the cost of the truth. You're willing to pay the price of the truth for the betterment of everyone else around you and for, of course, yourself. So, it is very, very important for people to be willing to pay the cost of the truth. I mentioned, and hopefully I've clearly illustrated the fact that if you don't, your consolation prize isn't better by any means. So, be willing to have the conversations. Be willing to speak on the truth. Be willing to observe those who are trying to speak the truth. Be willing to observe those who are trying to be actively silenced. Those are the people you should be listening to. They have a message that people fear. And that is what I'm particularly interested in. I'm interested in the characters and the figures that are clearly articulate, are clearly capable of having great conversation, and who aren't afraid of being challenged. Who aren't afraid of being name called certain things because they know their character, they know their values. Those are the most honorable people in society. Those are the strongest characters within society. And if you don't want to be like that, I don't understand who the hell you want to be. I don't understand what you stand for. I don't understand what you value. And it's really as simple as that. So, like I had mentioned, be willing to pay the price, good or bad. Everything else that comes after speaking the truth or seeking the truth is what it's going to be. It is as close to base reality as you can get. And everything else is nothing more than a delusion, than a curated delusion that does exist, that can exist. So yes, in a weird way, I do want to say you must question authority. You must question the narrative. You must question being politically correct. You must question these things, because if you don't, then you're playing exactly into the games that they want you to play anyways, which is to be fearful of punishment, to be fearful of consequence. But if you can take the power away from them, who are you and who are they? That is all I have to say for today's episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to go and leave a like and tap in with some of my other podcasts. I'll be going live again on Monday and, of course, next Thursday as well for the next episode. This is episode 260 of the Life of Champ podcast, talking about the cost of the truth. Make sure you follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify. You already know how it is. The whole list of all of them. Y'all have a good night. Like I said, next podcast on Thursday. Stay winning. And, of course, you know what I have to say. If you're going to play to win. Because I'm going to be playing to win. Y'all have a good night. Like I said, tap into the next podcast on Thursday.